yes or no. Was there ever a moment where the Secret Service actually considered pausing the rally?
The Secret Service would have paused the rally had they known or been
So the
told
answer is
there
no.
was an actual threat.
The answer is no. Correct?
I can speak to you in generalities.
No, I don't want generalities.
I
I want
all
specifics.
of the communications.
The answer is no. You did not consider pausing the rally, correct?
The people that are in charge of protecting the president on that day would never bring the former president out if there was a threat that had been identified.
Well, they did, because we've now identified 3 points in the 20 minutes before the shooting that the threat emerged. Let me point you to something else, which is the building that the shooter was perched on, seen here. This building is called the AGR building. I'm sure that you're familiar with it. It's no more than 150 yards from the stage where Donald Trump stood, yet the security perimeter was drawn such that the AGR building was placed outside of it. Director Cheatle, according to the Washington Post, the AR-15 styled rifle used in the shooting had a range of 400 to 600 yards, and therefore the AGR building was clearly within rifle range of the stage, correct?
Yes.
NBC News has reported that in the days before the rally, the Secret Service had identified the building as a vulnerability that required special attention, correct?
That's reporting from NBC?
Yes.
So I am still looking into an active investigation.
I know, but it's been 9 days. I mean, you should know that, right? And yet, despite the fact that the AGR building was in rifle range of the stage and it was flagged as a vulnerability, this building was put outside of the Secret Service's security perimeter. And I respectfully submit the Secret Service must expand its security perimeter to account for the kinds of weapons that can be used outside the perimeter to endanger the protectees inside the perimeter, ma'am. Let me turn your attention to some conspiracy theories that have been circulating and ask you to comment on them. First, you have not found evidence that the incident was a staged shooting, right?
Correct.
And you haven't found evidence that this was a result of a conspiracy of high-ranking government officials, correct?
Correct.
And you have not found evidence that this incident was in fact directed or perpetrated by a foreign state or entity, right?
And that's the last question, but I'll let the director answer that, please.
Not at this time.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Cloud from Texas.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm there was only one counter sniper who took one shot? Is that
We had multiple counter sniper teams available
yeah, on the
that
premises,
day.
but is only one took one shot? Is that correct, or only one?
Correct.
Okay. How many spent shell casings were found on the roof?
Again, I would have to defer you to the FBI's criminal investigation.
Okay. Word is that the car was rigged with explosives.
Again, sir, I'd have to defer you
To
to
the
the
FBI.
FBI's investigation.
Okay. You're not curious about? You don't communicate with them? No. Okay. CNN reported that the Secret Service did not sweep the building the shooter was used to shoot President Trump and other attendees. Is that true or false?
So we are conducting a mission insurance investigation and will depend on the information that we obtain from our investigations.
Okay. The Secret Service knew there was a suspicious person anywhere from 8 minutes before President walked on stage to 30 to 60 minutes. We have different reports. Was President Trump or his team notified of the threat?
I think there's a difference and a distinction between suspicious
person
and threat.
Yeah.
So we are going back and looking at communications to know when the information about a suspicious person was passed to Secret Service personnel.
Okay, but was President Trump or his team notified?
Again, we are going back and looking to make sure that we have the exact information of when those notifications were made and who those notifications were made to.
Okay. I think it's troubling for a lot of us that the number one question everyone in America is wondering is why was the roof left open? And after 9 days, we should at least maybe have a little bit of that information. And when you come to this committee hearing and you don't have anything to say about that, it's very, very troubling. Did you review the security plan for this event?
I personally do not review security plans for events that take place across the country.
Any of them?
We have a number of events that take
Who's
place.
the top-level official who reviews the security plans?
There's a number of people that review security plans
Who's
as they
ultimately
unfold.
responsible for signing off on a security plan?
It's a conjunction of personnel. There are people on the ground, there are supervisors on the detail, there are people at headquarters.
So there's not one person who says, okay, this is good, it's copacetic, we're going for it?
I think much in the way that we build our security plans, where they are
No
multi-layered.
doubt there's teams working different aspects of it, but ultimately, isn't there an individual who signs off on the plan?
Much like how we design our security plans, they're multi-layered, there are multiple layers.
So there's
of
no
people.
accountability?
There is accountability, sir.
There's, this is whether it's the FBI or Fauci or anything, it's time after time after time, these multiple layers of accountability turn into layers of plausible deniability in agency after agency after agency. That's got to be fixed, because you keep coming here and expecting, yes, you're saying I'm responsible, but, and you're accountable for it, but then there's nothing. What do you mean by that? I mean, you're saying you're going to keep your job, right?
I assure you, sir, that if we determine through the course of our investigation that someone or people need to be held accountable, we will do so.
What level of, if President Biden, God forbid, had been shot and killed, would you think that was worthy of resignation?
I would do the same thing that I'm doing here, where I would want to make sure that we are conducting an investigation, that there is continuity in that investigation, and that we could find the answers
You do not
to
think
what
the
happened.
assassination of somebody under your details is worthy of resignation?
I think that this event was tragic and deserves answers.
The thing that you've said so far is that you want to make sure that this never happens again. The thing is, everyone in America knows that's not the job description that you're tasked with. The job description you're tasked with is to make sure it never happens, period. One of your goals in the strategic plan is to champion diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. You've accomplished the accessibility part. What standards, do you keep the same standards for all applicants and all, or does every Secret Service agent meet the same qualifications, or do you have different standards for different people?
Yes, sir. Everyone who moves through the application process has to meet the same standards to become a special agent.
Okay. The trouble I think we're having with right now, so far you gave a lame excuse for sloped roof. You said that local law enforcement's job was to cover up the building before backtracking on that. We were told that President Trump's team did not ask for security before you backtracked on that. You haven't provided the audio recording that this committee, the chairman, requested that was due Thursday. You didn't give us an advanced copy of your opening statement, but yet there was reporting on it somewhere else. There seems to be more information from YouTube videos than you're able to provide for us, and it begs the question to anyone, you're in charge of the investigation of your own failure. So how is anybody in America supposed to be able to trust the results of that investigation as being anything transparent and genuine?
That's the last question, but please feel free to answer the question, Director.
Sir, I've been a Secret Service agent for nearly 30 years. I have led with integrity, and I follow our core values of duty, justice, honor, loyalty, and courage. And I am doing that in this case, and I assure this committee that I will provide answers when we have a full and complete report, in addition to cooperating with all of the other investigations that are ongoing.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Khanna from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the chair and the ranking member for convening this hearing on a bipartisan basis. I join them in condemning the horrific assassination attempt on the former president. I am relieved for the sake of the country that he wasn't seriously hurt and that he survived, and my thoughts with him and his family during such a traumatic event. I also want to express condolences to Corey Comprator's family and recognize his heroism in saving his daughter's lives, and to the victims of that awful event. Now, Director Cheatle, would you agree that this is the most serious security lapse since President Reagan was shot in 1981 of the Secret Service?
Yes, sir, I would.
And, you know, do you know what Stuart Knight did when he was in charge at the time of the Secret Service? Do you know what he did afterwards?
He remained on duty.
He resigned. He resigned. And Stuart Knight was not a Democratic appointee or a Republican appointee. Look, I'm not questioning your judgment. I just don't think this is partisan. If you have an assassination attempt on a president, a former president, or a candidate, you need to resign. That's what Stuart Knight did. He was a Republican appointee, and he took responsibility. And I think you need to reflect. This is not a question of you. It's a question of the American people. You cannot go leading a Secret Service agency when there is an assassination attempt on a presidential candidate. I would say that about anyone who is running. And so I guess my question to you is, what's the difference between your position and what Stuart Knight did?
What I will tell you, sir, is that I am dedicated to finding the answers to what happened. And like every Secret Service agent, we don't shirk from our responsibilities. I will remain on and be responsible to the agency, to this committee, to the former president, and to the American public.
But is there a reason you wouldn't just do what Stuart Knight did after the Reagan assassination attempt?
I believe that I provided an answer.
There's nothing more that you have to say? I mean, do you really believe at this moment, given how divided the country is and the questions asked, that your service in this role is the best for the nation? I mean, I'm not saying you can't do public service again, you can't do something else again. Do you really genuinely in your heart believe that you being in this role is what's right for America at this moment? I mean, do you think there are people who are Trump supporters who have confidence in you? The one thing that we've got to have agencies in this country that are transcend politics, that have the confidence of independents, Democrats, Republicans, progressives, conservatives. Do you really believe that the majority of this country has confidence in you right now?
I believe that the country deserves answers, and I am committed to finding those answers and providing those answers.
Well, look, I believe, Director Cheatle, that you should resign. I think there are colleagues on both sides of the aisle who believe that, and I hope you'll consider it. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Palmer from Alabama for 5 minutes.
Director Cheatle, did local law enforcement ESU teams have compromise authority to engage a perceived threat?
Yes.
Why do you think they didn't use it?
I believe that they follow the same use of force that our agency.
You don't, when you have compromise authority, you don't have to get permission if you perceive a threat. And there were not just the ESU units, but there were local law enforcement that had line of sight on the shooter before the shots were taken. So one of my questions is there was supposed to be a briefing with the Secret Service sniper units, your counter-assault team members, with the contract team, with the local ESU teams. That didn't take place. Why was that?
So I have been told that there has been a briefing. There was a briefing that took place.
I've been told that there wasn't one.
And again, we are still looking into the facts of the investigation. So
Let me ask you this. When were you informed that there was a credible threat against President Trump, former President Trump? When did you learn of that?
Sir, the former president has a number of threats.
I didn't ask you that. There was a credible threat from Iran. When were you informed of that? Answer the question.
We have been monitoring the threats.
You
for
knew
the former
before.
president.
You knew before the rally, okay? All right. The site security plan is generally drafted by the site supervisor and the site agent, probably out of the Pittsburgh district office. Did they take into account the credible threat against President Trump?
Our personnel take into account the threats that are
Then
out
why
there.
would they leave a building? And I will correct the distance that's been quoted. It was about 140 yards with clear line of sight to the president. Why was that building not occupied on the roof? I mean, you could have put Barney Fife on the roof and kept somebody from getting up there. So why wasn't that done?
The plan that was developed that day encompassed a number of security mitigations.
The issue is the site supervisor, the site agent, And the special agent in charge, who I think signed off on the plan, did not include that in the inner perimeter, and they didn't have a plan to secure the building. As I understand it, the Butler County ESU unit was situated on the second floor of a building next to that, but they didn't have a clear line of sight of the roof. The angle was too severe. The photograph that was taken of the young man, of the shooter, when he had the rangefinder, was taken at 5:15. It wasn't until 5:38 that photograph was transmitted to the Secret Service sniper units. I don't understand the lack of interoperability here in the communication process. I don't understand why people didn't perceive that as a credible threat. The video that Mr. Christopher Morphy had shown there was clearly a credible threat. So how is it that all of these mistakes could be made? How many explosive devices were found on or near the site?
Again, I would have to defer you to the FBI.
Madam, I believe
Details
they
of
were
that.
in his car, and I think there might have been one near a main gas line. It wasn't just the fact that he had a rifle. It was the fact that he had the ability to inflict enormous harm, enormous numbers of casualties, had those devices exploded. I want to know also, when your agents conduct a site review, are they fully informed of all of the threats that are being made against the principle that they're protecting?
What I can tell you is that when our agents go out to conduct an advance, their whole goal is to ensure
I
the safety and
understand what their
security.
goal is. The failure to secure that building not only put the former president's life in danger, it put the lives of individuals in the crowd in danger as well. I mean, the Reagan shooting, there were other people shot at that time as well. And the Secret Service members' lives were in danger. So I don't understand how you can continue to stay in the position you're in when this was a failure of historic magnitude. 43 years without anything like this happening. And you failed, in this case, in a spectacular way. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Mfume from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to commend you and the ranking member on your joint statement and for holding this hearing that we might all at least attempt to try to get some answers. Some of us, Ms. Cheatle, grew up in an era not too unlike what we see today in terms of political violence. And some of us remember the November 22nd, 1963 assassination of President Kennedy. Some of us, like myself, remember 2 days later when Jack Ruby on live TV shot and killed Lee Harvey Oswald. We've seen over and over and over since that time these kind of attempts, whether it was the assassination of Martin Luther King or Bobby Kennedy, or the attempted attack on George Wallace in Laurel, Maryland, the shooting in 1981 of Ronald Reagan, our friend and colleague Steve Scalise shooting here in D.C., and the unfortunate attack on Paul Pelosi, and now this matter regarding former President Trump. Let me try, if I might, to take another walk at this. People just assume that whoever is in charge takes full responsibility when there's never been, at least on this magnitude and scale, this sort of failure. So when members ask you, are you going to resign, and you say you have no intention to, they are perplexed, like many people who watch what's going on. And there's some things I just don't understand. Why was the building, the ARG building, placed outside of the perimeter when clearly it was close enough for someone to launch an attack?
So again, sir, we are looking into all of the details of how the advance was comprised, but I can tell you that there was overwatch on that building provided that day.
By a drone?
I'm not going to get into the specifics of technology or assets that were used in
well,
this forum.
I think it's fair to say the overwatch failed. because the shooter got up on the roof and stayed there for a while, and people had pointed him out. So do you think that your overwatch was a failure in that case?
I think that we need to know the full details to understand how this occurred.
And why was the rooftop left naked to begin with? Can you tell us that, considering it was within the line of sight and so very close?
Again, I can't speak to the specifics of this particular event site, but what I can tell you is that when the Secret Service develops an advanced plan, they take into account a number of factors when they're building their advance. If there are buildings or areas of concern, and overwatch is one of those mitigations that they want to put in place, then they will cover off areas of responsibility.
I understand that, but the shooter came to the attention of your agency 52 minutes before the former president got to the stage. Did anybody get assigned to watch or cover that individual who had already been seen with a advanced finder on him and other suspicious matters? Was anybody assigned to track him?
So what I'd like to clarify is that a suspicious individual
I got that part.
was
It's
brought
not a threat.
to the attention
I know.
of our personnel. And again, having a rangefinder at an outdoor event.
Well, let me ask you this. When the suspicious person was brought to the attention of the Secret Service, was anybody in the detail ordered to follow and stay with that suspicious person just because they might become a threat?
So we have a number of teams that are on the ground. And again, we are trying to verify the timelines of when those notifications were made to our personnel so that they could assume the responsibility of trying to track that individual.
Ms. Cheatle, there has been a lot of discussion, some of which raised itself earlier in this hearing, about poor staff morale within your agency. And I have the July 17th report of Government Executive, which is a credible reporting service for the federal government, for employees. And the 2023 ranking of places to work within the federal government showed, and this is through the Office of Personnel Management, that the Secret Service came in 413th out of 459 sub-agencies and agencies. Can you explain that?
Certainly. What I can tell you is the Secret Service is a difficult job. It challenges our employees daily. It's holidays, it's weekends, it's no leave periods.
But Madam, people come to work knowing that. You do explain that when you hire somebody. They know that. It's the same with other agencies. They miss holidays, they come to work at odd hours. But to be one of the worst places to work within the federal government, 413 out of 459? I just need an explanation. What do you think as the director there?
I think that this
And that's the last question, but please answer Mr. Mfube's question.
I think that this is a challenging job. I think that it's a challenging environment to be in law enforcement, and we do have a no-fail mission. And our folks are tasked with that every day, 365 days of the year. But I can tell you I've also taken a number of measures since I have been the director to recruit and retain and stem the tide of attrition in our agency, which will hopefully alleviate some of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.